Section 7.4 The Synonyms of Satan. In this section, I will examine the concept of the Watchers in greater detail than in previous discussions, with particular emphasis on how these beings came to be associated with the figure of Satan. Additionally, I will explore other names ascribed to the Satanic figure throughout the Bible. While I have previously addressed Daniel's use of the term Watcher, this analysis will focus on tracing the development of the tradition from the Second Temple period through the intertestamental era and into the New Testament. To begin, it is essential to revisit the Book of 1 Enoch, a pivotal text that influenced later understandings of the Watchers. Within this work, key figures such as Samyaza and Azazel are central to the narrative. By examining their roles and actions, we can better understand how their characteristics and deeds contributed to the evolving conceptualization of the Watchers. These accounts provide the foundation for the eventual connection between the Watchers and the Satanic archetype, offering valuable insights into the development of this tradition within Jewish literature and its subsequent impact on early Christian thought. Section 7.4.1 Samyaza and Azazel. The Book of 1 Enoch, particularly in the Book of the Watchers, recounts the narrative of celestial beings who transgress divine law. The Watchers, a group of 200 angels assigned by God to observe humanity and maintain order on earth, ultimately rebel against their sacred mandate. Led by two prominent figures, Samyaza and Azazel, these angels descend to interact directly with humans, violating their heavenly commission. Samyaza, the leader of the Watchers, is depicted as the chief instigator of their rebellion. Driven by a lustful desire for human women, he persuades the other angels to join him in breaking their divine oath. Recognizing the enormity of their transgression, Samyaza compels the angels to swear an oath of collective participation in the fall. This act of defiance sets in motion a devastating cycle of corruption on earth. The Watchers father the Nephilim, giant offspring who are described as violent and destructive. These beings, embodiments of chaos, consume vast resources, and when these resources run out, they resort to devouring both humanity and each other, exacerbating the violence now pervading the world. 1 Enoch 6-1-5. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men and beget us children. And Samyaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. In response to the increasing corruption, God resolves to cleanse the earth through a cataclysmic flood that will wipe out all mortal creatures, including the Nephilim. However, the hybrid nature of the Nephilim, part angelic, part human, prevents their complete annihilation. While their physical bodies perish in the flood, their spirits, now disembodied, endure and transform into demons. 1 Enoch 15-8-12. But now the giants who are born from the union of the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies. Because they are born from men, and from the holy Watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. From the days of the slaughter and destruction and death of the giants, from the souls of whose flesh the spirits, having gone forth, shall destroy without incurring judgment. Thus shall they destroy until the day of the consummation, the great judgment in which the age shall be consummated, over the watchers and the godless, yea, shall be wholly consummated. Azazel's role in humanity's fall is equally significant, though notably different from that of Samyaza. While Samyaza leads the rebellion driven by carnal desires and imparts knowledge of enchantments, Azazel's transgressions focus more directly on teaching forbidden knowledge. He instructs humanity in the arts of weaponry, warfare, and vanity, including the crafting of ornaments and cosmetics. These teachings hasten the moral and societal decline, as humanity uses this knowledge to engage in violence, destruction, and self-indulgence, thereby deepening their corruption. 1 Enoch 8-1-4. And Azazel taught men to make swords, and knives, and shields, and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets, and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Samyaza taught enchantments, and root cuttings, and Amaros the resolving of enchantments, and Barakijal taught astrology, and Kokabel the constellations, and Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds, and Arakiel the signs of the earth, and Shamsiel the signs of the sun, and Sariel the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. As indicated in the verse above, many of the watchers are named, but Samyaza and Azazel are the two most prominent figures. God's response to the rebellion of the watchers is both swift and decisive. The suffering of humanity, oppressed by the Nephilim and corrupted by the watchers, reaches heaven. In response, God sends the archangels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel to confront the crisis. Michael is given the task of binding Samyaza, the leader of the watchers, and his followers, imprisoning them in a dark abyss until the day of judgment. Gabriel is assigned the task of stirring discord among the Nephilim, leading to their mutual destruction. Raphael is instructed to bind Azazel and cast him into the desert, where he will remain in isolation until the final judgment. Meanwhile, Uriel is sent to warn Noah of the impending flood, which will cleanse the earth of the corruption wrought by the watchers and their offspring. 1 Enoch 10:11-16. And the Lord said unto Michael, Go, bind Samyaza and his associates who have united themselves with women so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. In those days they shall be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. And whosoever shall be condemned and destroyed will from thenceforth be bound together with them to the end of all generations. And destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. Destroy all the wrongdoers and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. 1 Enoch 10-4-6. And again the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudale, and cast him therein. And place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. and on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. While Samyaza is portrayed as the leader and principal instigator of the Watchers' rebellion, Azazel's role in corrupting humanity is equally reprehensible. When these two figures are merged into a singular entity, one can discern the emergence of the later Satanic figure. There is much to consider in this narrative. If you were raised in a modern Western Christian household, you have likely encountered elements of this story woven into the biblical narrative, often without realizing their connection to the book of 1 Enoch. In this discussion, I will explore this narrative and its ties to the Bible. To begin, it is important to note that Samyaza does not appear in the Bible. However, his actions are frequently linked to certain verses, which I will now address. Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 to 4. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. In contemporary theology, the Nephilim are often described as fallen angels or the offspring of angels and human women. However, a closer look at the scriptural context and language suggests a different interpretation. The term, Nephilim, comes from the Hebrew root, NPL, meaning, to fall, but this connection to fallen angels is not strongly supported by the Bible. Instead, the Nephilim were likely powerful human figures, possibly descendants of Adam who were following God's ways, then intermarried with the women of Cain, symbolizing the fall into corruption. The phrase, sons of God, in Genesis most likely refers to those who follow God, not divine status. All throughout the Bible, terms like sons of God or children of God are used to refer to righteous individuals or those God has placed in authority. Hosea chapter 1 verse 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass, that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God. Psalm chapter 82 verses 6 to 7. I have said, Ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. This suggests that the Nephilim were influential figures, such as leaders or kings, rather than celestial angelic beings, symbolizing humanity's failure to fulfill God's mandate. The term, giants, likely refers to their power or influence, not their physical size, consistent with other ancient texts where giants are portrayed as mighty warriors or rulers. Their connection to Cain's lineage underscores their humanity and rebellion against divine order, linking their power to moral consequences rather than celestial origins. In this context, the Nephilim embody the darker aspects of human ambition and the misuse of power, reflecting humanity's inclination toward dominance and tyranny rather than being fallen angels. As for Azazel, he is mentioned in Leviticus, not as a being, but as a desert location. Leviticus chapter 16 verses 8 to 10. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord, and the other lot for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat upon which the Lord's lot fell, and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat, on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat, shall be presented alive before the Lord, to make an atonement with him, and to let him go for a scapegoat into the wilderness, Azazel. The book of 1 Enoch appears to personify the desolate wilderness as Azazel, later illustrating his imprisonment there by the archangel Raphael. This reinforces the concept we've discussed previously, the personification of symbolism. Section 7.4.2 Mastema. We now turn our attention to the figure of Mastema, who features prominently in the Book of Jubilees, an apocryphal text from the Second Temple period, likely written after the composition of 1 Enoch. Mastema occupies a somewhat ambiguous role within the narrative, serving as both an adversary to humanity and a tester of faith. He is depicted as a leader of demonic entities, specifically those connected to the recently deceased Nephilim, and is associated with themes of temptation, judgment, and divine authority. In the Book of Jubilees, the narrative surrounding the fall of the Watchers unfolds similarly to that found in 1 Enoch. However, key figures like Samyaza and Azazel are not explicitly named. Rather, their presence is implied or assumed within the storyline. It is within this context that Mastema first appears, portrayed as a leader or at least a sympathizer of these rebellious spirits. He intervenes in the divine proceedings, petitioning for a portion of the spirits to remain unbound, so that they might continue to fulfill their purpose of testing and tempting humanity. This intervention highlights Mastema's role as a mediator of sorts, navigating between the divine will and the rebellious entities, emphasizing his function in the moral and spiritual testing of humankind. Jubilees 10-4-9. But do thou bless me and my sons, that we may increase and multiply and replenish the earth. And thou knowest how thy watchers, the fathers of these spirits, acted in my day. And as for these spirits which are living, imprison them and hold them fast in the place of condemnation, and let them not bring destruction on the sons of thy servant, my God. For these are malignant, and created in order to destroy. And let them not rule over the spirits of the living, for thou alone canst exercise dominion over them. And let them not have power over the sons of the righteous from henceforth and forevermore. And the Lord our God bade us to bind all. And the chief of the spirits, Mastema, came and said, Lord, Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them hearken to my voice, and do all that I shall say unto them. For if some of them are not left to me, I shall not be able to execute the power of my will on the sons of men. For these are for corruption and leading astray before my judgment. For great is the wickedness of the sons of men. And he said, Let the 10th part of them remain before him, and let 9 parts descend into the place of condemnation. In the verse cited above, Mastema contends that these spirits serve a necessary purpose: to lead sinners astray and to test the righteousness of humanity. In response, God permits Mastema to retain authority over 1/10 of the spirits while binding the remaining 9/10. This event solidifies Mastema's position as a figure with limited but divinely sanctioned authority, emphasizing his dual role as both an adversary to humanity and a servant within the framework of God's overarching plan. This dynamic underscores the complexity of his character, functioning simultaneously as an agent of temptation and a mechanism through which human virtue is tested and refined. In the narrative of Abraham's trial, Mastema plays a role akin to Satan in the Book of Job. Jubilees 17:16. And the prince Mastema came and said before God, Behold, Abraham loves Isaac his son, and he delights in him above all things else. Bid him offer him as a burnt offering on the altar, and thou wilt see if he will do this command, and thou wilt know if he is faithful in everything wherein thou dost try him. Several important observations arise from this passage. First, Mastema is identified as a prince, a title that underscores his prominent, though subordinate, role within the cosmic order. While not a king, the designation of prince grants him significant authority, echoing the term archon that appears in the Book of John. The translation of archon varies across Bible versions, being rendered either as prince or ruler, but the implication of leadership remains consistent. Additionally, Mastema accuses Abraham of lacking sincerity in his devotion to God, a role reminiscent of Satan's function in the Book of Job. However, what stands out in this interaction is the subtlety of Mastema's approach, adding depth to the portrayal of his character as an accuser within the broader biblical narrative. Job chapter 1 verses 7 to 10. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord, and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God, and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord, and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made an hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. In the book of Job, Satan is depicted as merely on earth, moving back and forth, when God directs him to focus on Job and test his faith. In contrast, Mastema takes a more active role by directly identifying Abraham as a target for testing. When Abraham succeeds in his trial, Mastema is portrayed as being defeated. This distinction reveals a significant difference between the two figures. Whereas Satan in Job functions as an instrument of divine testing, Mastema is shown not as a passive tool, but as an actively malevolent force, opposing God's plan and striving to undermine human righteousness. Jubilees 18 to 9:12. And I stood before him, and before the prince Mastema, and the Lord said, Bid him not to lay his hand on the lad, nor to do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears the Lord. And I called to him from heaven, and said unto him, Abraham, Abraham. And he was terrified and said, Behold, here am I. And I said unto him, Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything to him. For now I have shown that thou fearest the Lord, and hast not withheld thy son, thy firstborn son, from me. And the prince Mastema was put to shame. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and, behold, a ram caught by his horns, and Abraham went and took the ram and offered it for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. Mastema continues his malevolent actions throughout the Exodus narrative, where he actively opposes Moses and the Israelites in their pursuit of freedom from Egypt. In this account, he is depicted as the one who grants the sorcerers their powers and incites Pharaoh and the Egyptians to chase after the fleeing Israelites, thereby reinforcing his role as a direct instigator of opposition to God's divine plan. Jubilees 48 to 9-13. And the prince Mastema stood up against thee, and sought to cast thee into the hands of Pharaoh, and he helped the Egyptian sorcerers. And they stood up and wrought before thee the evils indeed we permitted them to work, but the remedies we did not allow to be wrought by their hands. And the Lord smote them with malignant ulcers, and they were not able to stand, for we destroyed them so that they could not perform a single sign. And notwithstanding all these signs and wonders, the prince Mastema was not put to shame, because he took courage and cried to the Egyptians to pursue after thee with all the powers of the Egyptians, with their chariots, and with their horses, and with all the hosts of the peoples of Egypt. And I stood between the Egyptians and Israel, and we delivered Israel out of his hand, and out of the hand of his people, and the Lord brought them through the midst of the sea as if it were dry land. The Book of Jubilees contains numerous additional examples of Mastema's actions. However, the key point I wish to emphasize is that Mastema serves as a personification of malevolent forces within the text. He embodies the ongoing conflict between divine authority and human sinfulness, yet paradoxically, he frequently acts as an essential instrument of divine justice. This portrayal contrasts in significant ways with the figure of Satan in the book of Job, which is generally considered to have been written much earlier. Section 7.4.3 Belial. The next satanic entity we will examine is Belial. The term Belial appears multiple times in the Old Testament, where it is primarily used to denote wickedness, worthlessness, or lawlessness. Deuteronomy chapter 13 verse 13. Certain men, the children of Belial, are gone out from among you, and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their city, saying, Let us go and serve other gods, which ye have not known. The term Belial here refers to individuals who lead others into idolatry, reflecting their deep wickedness and disregard for the covenant. It is often associated with the rejection of God's law and can describe those, whether individuals or spirits, who corrupt others, guiding them away from righteousness. This concept is also seen in 1 Samuel, where Hannah speaks to Eli the priest to defend her actions after he mistakenly assumes she is drunk. 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 16. Count not thine handmaid for a daughter of Belial, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hitherto. Hannah is emphasizing that her actions, her fervent prayer and visible distress, are not indicative of wickedness, but rather a sincere plea to God, coming from a heart full of anguish and sorrow. In the New Testament, Belial is mentioned explicitly only once. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 15. And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? Paul's contrast of Christ with Belial highlights a dualistic framework in which Christ represents the ultimate good, while Belial symbolizes evil and opposition to God's divine purpose. In this context, the term is used to emphasize the stark opposition to God, but I do not believe Paul is personifying Belial here. Rather, he is drawing upon the Old Testament usage of the term. The reason I brought up Belial is due to his prominence in the War Scroll, a text found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. In this document, Belial is depicted as a fallen angel, and the scroll offers a detailed apocalyptic vision of the final cosmic battle between the forces of good and evil. The narrative describes an epic conflict between the sons of light, those faithful to God's law, and the sons of darkness, the forces of evil led by Belial. This battle is portrayed as a climactic confrontation between two opposing forces, spanning both earthly and heavenly realms. The eventual victory of the sons of light over the sons of darkness is seen as a necessary step in the purification and restoration of the world, where God's righteousness will prevail. In the War Scroll, Belial's forces are depicted as numerous and formidable, embodying everything that stands in opposition to the divine order. His role extends beyond being a mere military leader. He represents spiritual corruption, and the forces determined to thwart God's ultimate plan for justice and peace. The battle described is not merely a physical confrontation, but also a metaphysical one, where Belial's influence over the world is decisively defeated, and God's sovereignty is fully established. This vision closely parallels modern depictions of Satan and the Antichrist in their role as embodiments of evil and opposition to divine authority. Section 7.4.4 Beelzebub. The term Beelzebub appears infrequently in the Bible, yet its evolution reveals important shifts in the understanding of demonology. In the Old Testament, the name is presented as Baal-zebub, linking it to the Mesopotamian deity Baal. This god is notably invoked by King Ahaziah of Israel, who seeks his guidance after suffering an injury. 2 Kings chapter 1 verses 2-3. And Ahaziah fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria, and was sick. And he sent messengers, and said unto them, Go, inquire of Baal-zebub the god of Ekron whether I shall recover of this disease. But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, Go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say unto them, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel, that ye go to inquire of Baalzebub the god of Ekron? Baalzebub is described as the god of Ekron, a Philistine city that is frequently mentioned throughout the Old Testament. 1 Samuel chapter 5 verses 8 to 10. They sent therefore and gathered all the lords of the Philistines unto them, and said, What shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? And they answered, Let the ark of the God of Israel be carried about unto Gath. And they carried the ark of the God of Israel about thither. And it was so, that, after they had carried it about, the hand of the Lord was against the city with a very great destruction. And he smote the men of the city, both small and great, and they had emerods in their secret parts. Therefore they sent the ark of God to Ekron. And it came to pass, as the ark of God came to Ekron, that the Ekronites cried out, saying, They have brought about the ark of the God of Israel to us, to slay us and our people. I would like to emphasize that in Isaiah 44, we are clearly told that foreign gods are not truly divine, but are simply human projections or ideals. However, by the time of the New Testament, Beelzebub evolves into a much more personal and sinister figure. When Jesus casts out demons, the Pharisees accuse him of doing so by the power of Beelzebub, whom they refer to as the Prince of Demons. Matthew chapter 12 verses 22 to 28. Then was brought unto him one possessed with a devil, blind, and dumb. And he healed him, insomuch that the blind and dumb both spake and saw. And all the people were amazed, and said, Is not this the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, This fellow doth not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub the prince of the devils. And Jesus knew their thoughts, and said unto them, Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And if I by Beelzebub cast out devils, by whom do your children cast him out? Therefore they shall be your judges. But if I cast out devils by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God is come unto you. This accusation marks a significant shift in the perception of Beelzebub, moving from a mere pagan deity, essentially a human projection of ideals, into a central figure within a demonological framework. It reflects a broader evolution in Jewish thought, where foreign gods, once dismissed as idols, were increasingly viewed as manifestations of malevolent spiritual powers. By the time of the New Testament, Beelzebub had come to represent a satanic figure, or a high-ranking demonic ruler within an organized hierarchy of evil. Jesus responds decisively to this accusation, using logic to dismantle the Pharisees' argument. He argues that if Satan, or any prince of demons, were to cast out demons, it would ultimately lead to the destruction of his own kingdom. It is significant to note that the term Satan here means adversary, implying that Jesus is pointing out the irrationality of an enemy turning against its own forces. Jesus focuses on exposing the illogical nature of the Pharisees' claim, suggesting that such actions would undermine the stability of a hypothetical demonic realm. Interestingly, Jesus does not directly address the concept of a demonic kingdom, or affirm the existence of a structured hierarchy led by Beelzebub. Rather, his response highlights the Pharisees' inconsistency and emphasizes the divine authority behind his actions. To further reveal their double standards, he asks, By whom do your children cast him out? The term, children, likely refers to the Pharisees' disciples. This question serves as a trap for the Pharisees. If their disciples can cast out demons, then they must either be serving the prince of demons, or, if they do so by the Spirit of God, Jesus is similarly empowered by the same Spirit. Though Jesus does not explicitly affirm the existence of a demonic kingdom, his reference to a divided kingdom indirectly suggests the possibility of an organized realm of evil spirits. This interpretation has deeply influenced Christian theology, contributing to the belief in a structured demonic order led by Satan or a similar figure. However, the focus of Jesus's response is not on endorsing a demonic kingdom, but on exposing the absurdity of the Pharisees' accusations and redirecting attention to the far greater reality of God's kingdom, which stands in stark opposition to any imagined realm of darkness. Sectio 7.4.5 The Devil. We have already explored the concept of devils in general, but what about the specific term, devil, with a capital D? This designation appears in several places throughout the Bible, referring to a particular being or concept, typically understood as the adversary, accuser, or deceiver, and is often equated with Satan. It is worth noting that the use of devil, with a capital D, is unique to the New Testament, reflecting a more specific and nuanced understanding. The term devil is derived from the Greek word diabolos, meaning slanderer or accuser. This term was likely chosen because its definition aligns closely with the Hebrew word Satan, which also denotes an adversary or accuser. However, while diabolos is a fitting translation, its usage in the New Testament seems to reflect a more developed characterization of this figure compared to the portrayal of Satan in the Old Testament. The reason I revisit the term devil here is to explore its implications within a particular verse in the book of John. John chapter 8 verses 42 to 44. Jesus said unto them, If God were your Father, ye would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do ye not understand my speech? Even because ye cannot hear my word. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, and the father of it. In most interpretations, this passage is understood as Jesus accusing his audience of following the devil as their spiritual father. This being is described as a murderer from the beginning and the father of lies, which points to a singular entity. Jesus's description of the devil as the father of lies can also be interpreted symbolically, representing humanity's inclination to embrace falsehood, idolatry, and self-deception. These lies, in turn, can be seen as the murder Jesus refers to, since they led to the physical and spiritual death of Adam and Eve. As we have seen in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus similarly referred to the Pharisees' followers as their children. In both instances, the terms children and father should be interpreted symbolically, not literally. They signify moral and spiritual influence, rather than biological relationships. In these passages, Jesus highlights a stark contrast. On one side, those who align with the kingdom of God, and on the other, those who align with the kingdom of Satan. To be a child of God is to follow his will, while to be a child of the devil is to walk the deceptive and destructive path of sin and rebellion.